I parked the car in our driveway at 6:48 p.m., exactly 12 minutes before sunset. The sky still wore the bruised orange streaks of dusk, the kind that makes you believe something meaningful might still happen if you wait long enough. I'd skipped lunch, stopped by the butcher's for the ribeye Alana loved, and even picked up that overpriced Pinot Noir she pretended not to like, but always finished first. It was our 5th wedding anniversary, and my 34th birthday. I balanced the small grocery bag and gift box in one hand as I unlocked the front door. I imagined the way she'd smile, the way she used to lean into me, mumbling something soft about how birthdays and anniversaries shouldn't have to share a date, but at least we'll never forget. I stepped inside and smelled nothing. Not steak. Not candles. Not even the floral scent of her shampoo wafting from the upstairs shower. The house felt like a waiting room, too clean, too quiet, too cold. And then I saw her. Not seated. Not waiting, not smiling, but standing at the kitchen counter with her back to me, slipping shoes into the side pocket of her suitcase like she'd done this 100 times. There was no music playing, no note on the counter, just the rhythmic sound of zippers and silence. Alana. I said her name the way you ask if someone's okay when they're obviously not. She didn't turn around. Let's not drag this out, she said instead, reaching into her leather tote and pulling out a pristine manila envelope. She walked over to the dining table and dropped it like a mic, flat, precise, and final. What is this? I asked, though I knew. The weight in my chest answered before she did. Divorce papers, she said, adjusting her cufflinks like she was late for a meeting. It's all there. I already signed. I stood in the foyer with my anniversary wine bottle sweating through the bag and my birthday gift still wrapped. You're serious? I asked, hearing the words echo in the open-plan kitchen like a man yelling into an empty canyon. She finally looked at me. Not the way you look at someone you once loved. Not even like a friend. More like a worn-out receipt you found in an old coat pocket. Once useful, now irrelevant. I've found someone better, she said, blinking once. He appreciates ambition. You just exist. She let that hang in the air like fog. I should have argued. Asked for context. Asked why she didn't say anything sooner. But I didn't. There was no heartbreak, just a slow, spreading stillness. I walked past her, set the wine down on the counter, and unwrapped the gift I had for her. It was a framed print of the night sky from the day we got married. Our wedding coordinates below it, engraved in brass. I thought it meant something. Maybe it did. Once. I placed it beside the papers and sat down. What's his name? I asked, thumbing through the documents. Dax, she said, like it was supposed to impress me. Of course it is. Don't do that, she said, sighing. Don't be petty. I read through the terms. Clean split. She waved spousal support. Wanted to keep the condo. I let her. The place was just drywall and memories now. She stood there as I signed on the dotted line. My hands didn't shake. I didn't need a second read. I didn't ask for anything in return. I was too tired for rage, too numb for sadness. The pen clicked, and that was it. 5 years wrapped in legal ink and manila. You're not going to fight? She asked, like she needed the drama to feel justified. I looked up at her, not in anger but clarity. There's nothing left to fight for. She hesitated, for the first time that night. Maybe she thought I'd beg. Or cry. Maybe she was counting on it. But I didn't give her that. Instead, I picked up the ribeye I'd planned to grill and placed it back in the fridge. You said you'd be home early, I murmured, not looking at her. I was, she said. To pack. She left then. Wheeled her suitcase out the door with the same click-click of heels I used to find comforting. I stood in the kitchen and listened to the car start, drive off, and vanish down the street we used to walk together on Sunday mornings. No lights were left on. No note was scribbled in gilt. Just silence. And divorce papers. I opened the fridge again and stared at the ribeye, still cold and raw. I could have cooked it anyway. Could have sat down, poured a glass of wine, made some hollow toast to survival. But instead, I shut the fridge, turned off the lights, and sat alone at the dining table in the dark. The frame with the star map glinted under the moonlight coming through the blinds. A frozen night sky, beautiful, unmoving, unreachable. Like her. Like the version of her I thought I married. I should have seen it coming. But denial is warm, and comfort is addicting. I stayed seated long after the engine hum had faded from the street. That was the night my marriage ended, not with a fight, but with formality, with paperwork and politeness. No steak, no cake, no candles, Just a woman who used to say forever, dropping off a final signature like a client canceling a service. Happy anniversary, Rowan. Happy birthday, too. A week. That's all it took. 7 days after signing those papers, the ink not even dry in my memory, Alana was back in a white dress, posting filtered smiles and sunset vows on Instagram. I wasn't following her anymore, obviously, but Priya, my coworker, made sure I didn't miss it. She walked into my office with a paper cup of green tea and a face full of the kind of second-hand rage only a nosy office bestie can muster. "You're not gonna believe this," she said, already unlocking her phone. I didn't want to see. Didn't ask to see. But when she shoved the screen in front of my face, I looked. And there they were. Dax Thornton and Alana Ellison, Mr. and Mrs. Soulmate 2.0. She wore a white backless gown, sheer sleeves, smiling like someone who hadn't just obliterated half a decade of marriage. He wore a suit too tight in the chest and a man bun pulled so perfectly taut it probably hummed when he blinked. "Finally married to my soulmate," the caption read. "The universe always brings you your true match." Dizzy crescent moon, the emojis hit harder than the words. I'd stared at that screen for too long before I realized my ramen had gone cold. I poked at it with my chopsticks like it might somehow warm back up if I willed it. It didn't. "Are you okay?" Priya asked, watching me like I might combust. "Yeah," I lied. "Because what else do you say? That your ex-wife turned your marriage into a pit stop on the way to a filtered fairy tale? That the woman who once cried during Pixar movies now married someone who probably quoted himself before brushing his teeth?" I went home that night to my one-bedroom apartment, still halfway full of boxes I hadn't unpacked. The new place smelled like fresh paint and someone else's past. I sat on the edge of the bed and scrolled through her public photos, not to torture myself, I told myself, but for clarity, closure, whatever excuse you feed the bruised part of your pride. There were pictures of them on a beach, on a balcony, in a field of lavender, always holding hands, always framed in golden hour light like a sponsored ad for some boutique honeymoon retreat. She never looked at me that way in photos. Or maybe she did, and I forgot. The algorithm didn't let me forget. I just opened TikTok to drown it all out when a video popped up under the For You tab. A montage of wedding clips set to a syrupy acoustic cover of some pop hit, probably Billie Eilish or something equally haunting. There she was, spinning in slow motion, dress fanning around her, hair pinned with pearls, while Dax lifted her into the air like a discount Nicholas Sparks hero. My thumb hovered over the screen. I should have swiped. I should have looked away. But I didn't. I just watched, jaw tight, heart strangely calm. This wasn't pain. Not the raw, jagged kind. This was something else. Something colder. Numb, almost clinical. Like watching a surgery on someone else's body. "You okay?" Jamal asked over the phone later that night. He called after I sent him a screenshot of the wedding post. "She married the dude in 7 days, man. That's not normal." I leaned against the kitchen counter, staring into the dark. "Guess it wasn't about normal. You know what this is?" Jamal continued. "This is her trying to erase you. Like you were a trial version. Like the real thing starts with him." "Yeah," I said, sipping the beer I wasn't even enjoying. "It worked." "Nah, screw that," he said. "She can put on a show, but deep down, she's scared. You don't rebound into marriage unless you're running from something. Or sprinting toward a tan and a man bun." Jamal snorted. "You remember that show we watched, Love Bombs and Lies? She's in season 2, bro, trust me." I tried to laugh, but it barely came out. The silence afterward felt heavier than the call itself. When I finally hung up, I sat down and stared at my own wedding photo on the bookshelf. We were smiling. She had a flower crown. I had hope. And now, she had Dax. Or whatever version of him she thought was real. A few days later, I went to drop off a package at the post office, and the clerk glanced at my last name on the form. "Any relation to the new Thornton couple?" she asked. "Saw them in the paper." "The what?" I blinked. She pulled out a local lifestyle magazine from the rack behind her. And there they were. Again. Front page. "Modern Love. Alana and Dax find soulmate magic." The article talked about their instant connection, their aligned vision boards, and how they met at a networking brunch for spiritually awakened professionals. I wanted to vomit. They said their first conversation was about inner clarity. The woman continued, clearly enthralled. "Isn't that romantic?" "Sure," I muttered, grabbing my receipt and walking out before I set something on fire. I sat in my car with the air conditioning on full blast, gripping the wheel like it might keep me from unraveling. I wasn't heartbroken. Not exactly. But there was something that stung deeper than betrayal. It was erasure. The way she leapt from our life into a glossier one, as if I'd never mattered. As if I were just a prequel to a story that finally got interesting. I deleted the photo from my bookshelf that night. Not out of anger, but necessity. I needed space. Not just in my apartment, but in my head. She had moved on, crafted her narrative, and packaged it in likes and hashtags. But me? I was still here. Existing. Breathing. Surviving. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. Because while she rushed to claim her forever, I was learning something more valuable. How to rebuild, brick by honest brick. It started with a YouTube ad. One of those unbearable, unskippable clips where a shirtless guy with a headset paces around a pool in Bali, shouting about discipline while flexing his abs like they're credentials. Only this one had a familiar voice. A voice I used to hear from the bathroom while Alana curled her hair and rehearsed affirmations in the mirror. The screen lit up with his face, bronzed skin, that overly sculpted beard, sunglasses that covered half his forehead, and there it was. Hi, I'm Dax Thornton, founder of the Alpha Ascend Method. If you're a man who's tired of losing, tired of being a side character in your own life, then brother, it's time to wake up. I blinked. Brother? Your success begins when you say goodbye to weakness, he continued, his voice dropping an octave like he was auditioning to narrate a car commercial. No more excuses. No more soft mornings. Just grit, grind, and glory. I nearly dropped my phone. This was Alana's husband? This was the guy who replaced me? The human hashtag? Curiosity got the better of me. I clicked through. His channel was loaded with thumbnails of him pointing aggressively at whiteboards, standing in front of Lamborghinis he probably didn't own, and flexing beside poorly lit charts labeled things like the dominance triangle and hormonal kingship. There were titles like Masculine Energy is Currency, You Can't Build a Kingdom from a Cubicle, and my personal favorite, Why She Left You, and Why It Was Your Fault. I sat on the couch, stunned. Not hurt. Not even angry. Just fascinated. Like watching a documentary on a species you didn't think still existed. The guy wasn't just a motivational speaker. He was a full-blown masculinity brand. He had books, merchandise, a paid Discord server called The Den, and a custom supplement line called Thorfuel. I clicked on the product page. Each bottle had a picture of his flexing torso and slogans like "Power isn't given. It's swallowed." For $49.99 a bottle. When Jamal came over that night, I showed him everything. He laughed so hard he spilled his soda on my rug. Bro, this dude looks like if an Instagram filter grew a personality and started grunting into a mic. He calls himself a divine masculine, I said, still scrolling. Alana said he appreciates ambition. This guy thinks crying is a government conspiracy. Jamal wiped his eyes. You think she knows? Like, knows how deep the rabbit hole goes. She called him her Alpha King on her Instagram story. I think she's all in. Alpha King, he repeated, shaking his head. Man, that sounds like something you unlock in a video game after slaying 10 dragons. I almost laughed, but then it hit me. Wait a second, I said, pausing the video. I've met this guy before. Jamal raised an eyebrow. 2 years ago, at a gas station off Highway 19. I was filling up, and this guy approached me with a duffel bag full of pills and flyers. Said he was launching a new supplement line that would revolutionize male performance. Tried to get me to invest. No way. I told him no. He got pushy. I reported him. He got arrested in the parking lot for selling unlicensed products. Jamal's jaw dropped. You're telling me your ex-wife married a man-bun-wearing felon who used to sell bootleg vitamins out of a trunk? That's exactly what I'm telling you. He leaned back on the couch, stunned. That's poetic, bro. She traded in steak and sanity for Thorfuel and trauma bonding. I couldn't help but chuckle. Not because it was funny, but because it was surreal. Life doesn't usually write punchlines that sharp. The next morning, I did what I hadn't done in a while. I opened Alana's profile. It was public again, probably by design. A new post was up. Him sitting cross-legged on a meditation mat, shirtless of course, captioned, tapping into solar energy and the fire of the inner masculine. Grateful for the goddess who walks beside me. Hashtag Alpharize, hashtag solar sexual, hashtag divine union. I reread that caption 5 times. Solar. Sexual. She used to laugh at people like this. Used to snort when self-help bros talked about vibrations and energy alignment. And now she was reposting his shirtless wisdom nuggets like scripture. The transformation wasn't just his, it was hers, too. She'd become a reflection of his brand, posing in white linen dresses beside crystal altars, hosting co-empowerment brunches, quoting Rumi like he was a podcast guest. I scrolled further, finding a photo of them in a hot tub under string lights, holding hands, eyes closed. Her caption read, "Healing the wounded masculine together, honoring his leadership, letting love be the lesson." I shut the app. I wasn't jealous. Not in the way she imagined. I didn't miss her. Not anymore. What I mourned, if anything, was the illusion, the lie I'd bought into, that we were equals, that love meant stability, that commitment meant consistency. She used to laugh at these types. Now she was married to one. Later that week, I told my therapist about the gas station encounter. She stared at me, pen hovering above her notepad. "Have you considered," she said carefully, "that Alana might be chasing an idealized version of herself? That this man, Dax, or whatever, represents a fantasy she thinks she deserves." "I considered that," I said. "But I also considered that she's just gullible. Or maybe she's trying to erase the version of her that married you. That landed harder than I wanted it to." I walked home that night through the city, headphones in, ignoring the buzz of notifications. Dax was everywhere now. Ads, clips, his ridiculous face showing up on podcasts I used to like. I couldn't escape the algorithm, but I could decide what I let in. By the time I got back to my apartment, something inside me had settled. She made her choice. She chased the glow, the glitter, the version of life that looks good in filters. Me? I was still here. Real. Flawed. Filterless. And I'd take that over solar sexuality and Thor fuel any day. I didn't set out to go digging. I swear I didn't. It started with a cardboard box, one of the last left to unpack in the corner of my new apartment. I'd labeled it miscellaneous at the time, thinking it held things like chargers, mugs, maybe old birthday cards. But when I opened it, the first thing I saw was our wedding album. Thick leather cover, gold embossed title, Rowan and Alana, July 17th. I hadn't touched it since she walked out. I thought about throwing it away, but something made me sit down instead, right there on the carpet. I opened it slowly, flipping past photos of champagne toasts and rooftop twirls, the two of us grinning in borrowed light. I looked so young. We both did, like kids playing house, hoping no one would notice we had no idea what we were doing. I paused at one of us laughing during our vows, my tie slightly crooked, her bouquet tilted like she'd been caught mid-spin. I remember that moment. She whispered something about my socks not matching, and we both cracked up. It was one of the only unscripted moments of the day. Beneath the album, I found something wrapped in tissue paper. I pulled it out, Alana's high school yearbook. I didn't even know I had it. She must have packed it during one of her closet purges and tossed it in this box without thinking. I hadn't ever looked through it when we were married. Why would I? But now, curiosity crept in, sharp and sudden. I opened the yearbook and started flipping through pages filled with early 2000s hairstyles, braces, class quotes about the future and friendship and destiny. Then I saw him. Not the version plastered all over Instagram now. Not the tan, smug, kale smoothie guru. No, this was Dax, before the reinvention. Back when he was Danny Thorndale. He looked harmless. Skinny. Pale. Balding even as a teenager, with oversized glasses and a set of teeth that hadn't yet met an orthodontist. His senior quote was, "Success is rented, and rent is due every day." I nearly laughed. Even then, he was trying to sound profound. A boy wearing ambition like a jacket 2 sizes too big. I flipped to the sports section. No photos of him in uniform. Then the clubs. He was in debate, AV, and something called Future Male Leaders, which sounded like a cult before it had branding. I snapped a picture of his yearbook photo and sent it to Jamal. 10 seconds later, my phone rang. "Is this for real?" he asked, barely holding back a wheeze. 100%. He looks like he got beat up by a science fair. I chuckled, but something about the transformation didn't sit right. This wasn't just glow-up territory. This was surgical resurrection. He'd erased Danny and replaced him with Dax, Alpha King, solar sexual, god of grind. I dug deeper. Google became my accomplice. I typed in Danny Thorndale and added loan, plastic surgery, transformation. I didn't expect much, but Jamal had better luck. He sent me a Reddit thread within minutes. There it was, a post from a user claiming to be his ex-girlfriend. AMA, I dated Dax Thornton before the beard. She included pictures, before and afters that told the whole story. Same eyes, same mole on the left jawline, different everything else. According to her, she'd lent him $12,000 after they graduated community college. He said it was for a life pivot. She never saw the money again. Then came the receipts, actual ones. Rhinoplasty, hair transplant, veneers, jawline contouring. She even uploaded a voice message he left when they broke up. He didn't sound like Dax. He sounded like a scared kid trying to sound grown. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. So this was him. The man my wife had married. The man she claimed was her soulmate. A man who didn't just change, he shed his skin entirely. And the price of that transformation? Someone else's heart and savings. Damn, Jamal muttered on the phone. She married a myth. No, I corrected. She married a sales pitch. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I still loved Alana, not really, but because the illusion had grown roots in my mind. She discarded 5 years with me for a fiction. A carefully sculpted, cosmetically enhanced fiction. And she believed in it enough to marry it. Fast. I got up, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. The city lights blinked outside my window like a Morse code message I couldn't quite translate. I stared at the reflection in the glass, my face soft under the overhead light. Unfiltered, unsponsored, real. I hadn't changed much in the last decade. Some grays in my beard. A faint line between my brows. But I still recognized the man staring back. I wondered if Dax could say the same. I pulled out the wedding album again and stared at our faces. We looked happy. Real. There were flaws in every frame, blurry movement, windswept hair, uneven smiles. But there was truth in them. I wasn't perfect. I wasn't branded. But I was present. And I never had to invent a new version of myself to earn her love. Maybe that was the problem. She wanted fantasy. Wanted the version of a man who could stand on a stage and command applause, not one who sat at a dinner table and listened. She wanted someone whose value came wrapped in declarations and polished lighting. Not someone who existed in the in-between moments, quietly loyal, quietly real. I slipped the album back into the box and sealed it with packing tape. Some chapters don't need to stay open. Some truths, once uncovered, don't beg to be shared. They just sit with you, like a weight in your chest and a calm in your bones. Dax was Danny. Danny was a fiction. And Alana? She chose the fiction over the foundation. But the cracks were showing. And I had a feeling the truth would demand rent soon. I didn't reach out to her right away. For weeks, I let the truth sit like a stone in my pocket. Heavy, undeniable, but not quite sharp enough to cut. After finding out that Dax, Danny, was built on debt, dental work, and delusion, I figured it wasn't my place to warn Alana. She'd chosen him, chosen the fantasy. And for all I knew, she was still somewhere under a sunlit canopy sipping detox tea and journaling about quantum love. But then Jamal called me one night, laughter barely held in his throat. Yo, you've got to hear this, he said. Dax is writing a book. I was brushing my teeth, half listening, but that stopped me cold. A book? Yep, called Alpha Mind, Building Inner Dominance. He just posted a clip talking about how it's going to shift masculine consciousness worldwide. Guess who's funding it? I already knew the answer. Alana. Ding ding. There was a video too, him shirtless, again, in front of a vision board with phrases like energy sovereignty and testosterone integrity written in thick Sharpie. He was pacing in his usual way, back and forth like a panther pretending he wasn't just in a gilded cage of his own making. I couldn't have done this without my wife, he said into the camera. Her feminine flow has grounded my masculine fire. I gagged. Jamal burst out laughing. That night, I couldn't sleep. The thought of Alana, practical, always calculating, funding this man's delusion with her hard-earned money just gnawed at me. We'd fought about money so many times. About spending too much on takeout. About whether we needed new curtains or if the old ones just needed steaming. And now, here she was, bankrolling a man whose biggest achievement was managing to pronounce neuroplasticity while doing push-ups. It wasn't about jealousy. It was about disbelief. She was smart, ambitious. She'd built herself a solid career in logistics, sharp with numbers, brutal with deadlines. And yet she was sinking thousands into a man who sold alpha mindset kits that included a journal, a muscle band, and a link to a 10-minute voice memo of him breathing aggressively into a mic. I waited a few more days, hoping she'd realize it herself. But when I saw a new post of her holding his manuscript draft like it was a baby ultrasound, I caved. I didn't call. That would have been too personal. Too close. I wrote an email. Short. Polite. Subject, just a thought body. Make sure he's in it for you, not your credit score. No attachments. No sign-off. Just enough words to plant a question. She replied an hour later. Subject, wow body. Jealousy is such a weak look on you. You'll never understand what it's like to be chosen. I stared at the screen for a long time. You'll never understand what it's like to be chosen. Those words didn't just sting. They stripped something raw. Like I was some invisible seat filler in her life until the real leading man showed up. I shut the laptop, stood up, and walked the perimeter of my apartment 3 times, just to bleed off the anger. I wasn't angry at the email, not exactly. I was angry at how easily she'd rewritten the past, as if our 5 years together had been a long audition for someone more sparkly. But after the anger cooled, I felt something else underneath. Relief. Because that email confirmed something I'd suspected all along. She wasn't in love with Dax. She was in love with the idea of being adored. And he was fluent in the language of flattery. His entire persona was built to make people feel like they were ascending just by being near him. She needed that. Needed the myth of being chosen by a god in gym shorts. I just existed. She said that too. You just exist. But existence is what remains when illusion dies. I sat back down, opened the laptop, and stared at the inbox again. Her email sat there, bolded and biting. I didn't respond. I wouldn't. There was nothing else to say. I was never chosen. Fine. But I was about to be vindicated. Because people like Dax, people who build their kingdoms out of filtered sand and reheated wisdom quotes, eventually get caught in their own reflection. And I had a feeling the mirror was about to crack. That weekend, I walked through the farmer's market, letting the sun hit my shoulders and the jazz band from the corner booth fill the air with something sweet and alive. I didn't feel bitter. Not anymore. I felt awake, like I'd finally stepped out of her spell. A kid offered me a sample of local honey. I took it, smiled, told him it was the best I'd tasted in a long time. Because it was. Real always tastes better than fake. Even if it comes slow. Even if it comes alone. And Alana? She'd made her choice. She'd married the performance. But the curtain was starting to rise on Act 2. And I had front row seats. I hadn't planned on running into him, or standing 10 feet from him under blue spotlights while he hollered about discipline like he'd invented the concept. Jamal and I were at a business expo in Kyoto, mostly for networking and the excuse to expense sushi and bullet train rides. The expo was packed. Entrepreneurs in sharp suits, tech demos lighting up the corners of every booth, and seminar rooms buzzing with caffeine-fueled ambition. But there it was, on the final day's printed agenda, between a crypto panel and a keynote on AI scaling. Dax Thornton, mastering morning victory, the alpha advantage. Jamal nearly dropped his yakitori skewer. No. Freaking. Way. Oh, it's him, I muttered, scanning the room where a growing crowd was already lining up. And it looks like he upgraded from parking lot TED Talks to actual stages. We couldn't not go. Call it morbid curiosity. Call it strategic sabotage. But mostly, call it closure. The seminar room was ridiculous, blue and orange stage lighting, a full AV crew, and an intro video with dramatic quotes like, "Discipline is destiny, and every man dies, but not every man dominates." Then came the music, Eye of the Tiger, blasting through the speakers like we were at a high school pep rally. Then came the man himself. He strode out with his usual overconfidence, chest out like he was part lion, part prophet. He wore a tight black polo that hugged every rep of his gym obsession, and his signature man bun sat atop his head like a crown sculpted in hair gel. "Rise and conquer," he yelled, arms spread wide. The room roared back. Some actually stood. Jamal leaned toward me. They're clapping like he cured cancer. I didn't respond. I was too focused. Because there, in the spotlight, stood the man who replaced me, flashing his teeth, quoting Marcus Aurelius without reading the footnotes, and selling success like it came in 6 easy payments. For the next 30 minutes, he barked about winning mornings, drinking salt water, and waking up at 4:12 a.m. because alpha males don't need round numbers. He told stories about breaking through his own limitations and climbing the mountain of the self, while casually name-dropping monks, Marines, and Tony Robbins. Then came the live Q&A. People lined up behind two-aisle microphones, ready to praise or ask him about his skincare routine. Jamal gave me a look. I gave him a nod. And I stood. I waited until it was my turn. The room quieted slightly. Dax smiled, squinting into the lights. He hadn't recognized me yet. "My question's simple," I said. My voice was calm. "Even. When exactly did you go from selling knockoff supplements at Highway 19 to becoming a mindset coach?" It landed like a dropped piano. Dax's face changed in slow motion, smile stiffening, eyes twitching, a flicker of recognition sliding behind his perfectly white teeth. "Excuse me," he said, but it wasn't a real question. It was a defense mechanism. 2 years ago, gas station near Elkhart. "You pitched me Testo Lift and Brain Fuel Elite from a duffel bag," I continued, "and got arrested 15 minutes later. Curious how that fits into your rise and conquer narrative." The silence in the room was so complete you could hear the AC humming through the vents. Dax blinked. His jaw tightened. "Sir, if you have personal issues, no issue," I said, still calm. "Just wondering when fake supplements became morning dominance." Security appeared at the edge of the aisle. Jamal was already filming. "Sir, I'll have to ask you to leave," one of the guards said, approaching. "Sure," I replied, handing my badge to the nearest staffer and walking out on my own. Jamal caught up with me outside the doors, breathless and grinning. "Bro, that was legendary. I got all of it. Every second." "Don't post it," I said, even though I knew he would. He laughed. "It's already on TikTok." By morning, it had 1.2 million views. Comments ranged from, "Finally someone calls out these fake gurus. Dax Thornton equals discount Dan Bilzerian. Not Highway 19. Faced with tears of joy, Dax tried to issue a vague statement on his Instagram. Something about hateful trolls who fear powerful voices, but it didn't land. Screenshots of his arrest record began to circulate. Someone even found an old Yelp review complaining about Thor fuel causing hives. It spiraled fast. Alana didn't say anything. No posts. No comments. Her page stayed frozen on a boomerang of her and Dax clinking green smoothies. But I knew she saw it. I imagined her sitting at their kitchen counter, phone in hand, heart sinking, realizing the man she married was a glorified protein pusher with a vision board and a talent for sounding profound while saying absolutely nothing. And me? I went back to the expo, collected business cards, shook hands, talked strategy. But something had shifted. I felt lighter. Not because I embarrassed him. Though I won't lie, it felt good. But because the lie cracked in public. Because for the first time, the mask slipped, not just for her, not just for me, but for everyone. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't a takedown. It was truth, delivered clean, without apology. And it echoed, all the way from a hotel ballroom in Kyoto to every feed and scroll that carried his name. Dax Thornton, the Alpha King, had just been dethroned by a man who simply remembered. It was 3 days after the conference fallout when I got her message. No emojis. No dramatic monologue. No explanation. Just 2 words. "Did you know?" "No, hi." "No, Rowan." Just that. And honestly, it startled me more than if she'd sent a full essay about betrayal and broken chakras. I stared at the screen for a second, thumb hovering. I wasn't going to reply at first. But something in those 2 words, it wasn't anger. It wasn't smug. It was quiet. Like a candle flickering in a windstorm. So I typed, "About what?" I didn't wait long. Within seconds, a flood of screenshots came through. Messages, links, comments, headlines. One photo stood out, a screenshot from a Reddit thread titled, "The Truth About Dax Thornton, aka Daniel Thorndale." His real name. Not a branding choice. Not a cosmic rebirth. Just plain, square, unimpressive Daniel. The screenshots told the story. Dax, or Danny, had fabricated most of his resume. Claimed he graduated from Yale, when in fact, he flunked out of community college. His PhD in male psychology was from an unaccredited online certificate mill that folded in 2019. One of the LinkedIn profiles even had Stanford class of 2011 written proudly under his bio. Except Stanford never had a record of anyone named Daniel Thorndale in that year, or any year. There were 6 different LinkedIn accounts under variations of his name. One said he was a Navy SEAL. Another claimed he'd built 3 startups, all acquired. Someone traced those startups and discovered they were dissolved within 6 months of launch due to unpaid taxes and investor lawsuits. He'd also been sued twice. Once by a small supplement company in Utah for trademark infringement after trying to rebrand their pre-existing product as Thorfuel, and once by a former business partner who accused him of misappropriating funds meant for a wellness retreat. It wasn't just smoke. It was fire, and the whole forest was catching. Then came the final message from her. I really didn't know. That one landed differently. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't blaming me or asking for sympathy. It was just a slow unravel. Then came a voice note. I stared at it for a full minute before pressing play. Her voice was quiet, brittle at the edges. I know what you're thinking, she said. That I deserve this. And maybe I do. But I didn't know, Rowan. I didn't see it. He had answers for everything. Confident ones. Convincing. I thought he was the kind of man I'd always wanted. She exhaled. He told me he went by Danny before because he hadn't stepped into his power yet. I didn't realize stepping into your power meant lying about everything. She paused. I heard something clink in the background, glass maybe. A cup. I didn't marry a man, she whispered. I married a projection. And I don't know who that makes me. I played the message again. I didn't reply. Not immediately. Not for hours. Instead, I sat with it. Her voice. Her admission. That tiny sliver of truth buried beneath all the spiritual hashtags and filtered poses. It would have been so easy to gloat. To say, I told you so. To lean into the satisfaction of being right. But I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was sad. Not for her. For both of us. Because we both wasted time chasing something that never existed. She chased an illusion of strength. And I chased a version of her that only lived in my memory. That night, I walked past the old park near our favorite diner, the one with the creaky swings and the lamppost that flickered whenever the wind blew too hard. We used to sit on the benches and split late-night fries, pretending we were still in college and not already running from the distance forming between us. She always talked about ambition back then, about wanting to build something meaningful. I thought she meant a life, a family, but now I think she meant a brand, a version of herself that couldn't be questioned. The truth is, Alana didn't fall for Dax because she was stupid. She fell for him because she needed to believe she'd finally won, that she'd outgrown the quiet steadiness I offered and found something louder, shinier, bigger. But sometimes louder just means hollow. And now the echo had come back to her. When I finally replied, I kept it simple. You fooled a lot of people. You weren't alone. No judgment. No lecture. Just a hand extended through the smoke. She didn't respond. Not that night. Not for 2 more days. But when she did, it was another voice note. I'm not asking for anything, she said. I needed someone to know that I didn't choose him over you because he was better. I chose him because I was afraid I'd already failed with you. And I thought starting over meant becoming someone new. With someone new. A long silence. Then, I was wrong. That was the last thing she ever sent. No closure party. No tearful phone call. Just those 3 words, hanging in my inbox like a wilted apology no one asked for. And still, I didn't hate her. I pitted the part of her that thought reinvention meant erasure. Because truth always survives the branding. And masks, no matter how pretty, always crack. Somewhere out there, Dax, or Daniel, was still trying to plug the leaks in his empire. Still re-recording mantras and flexing into ring lights. Still hoping no one would remember where he came from. But I remembered. And so did she. That was enough. It was a Tuesday morning when it happened. A random day stitched between meetings, deadlines, and coffee that never quite kicked in. I was walking out of a client pitch, the kind where the room smelled like cologne and ambition, and everyone wore the same watch. Jamal had just texted me something about sushi later that night, and I was replying when I heard her voice behind me. Rowan? It was faint, hesitant. I didn't turn right away because my brain didn't expect to hear her voice out in the wild, without warning, without filters or perfectly arranged lighting. But I heard it again. Rowan. Hey. I turned, and there she was. Alana. She stood a few feet away on the sidewalk, wearing a cream blazer and flats that looked practical, not curated. No goddess energy in sight. No linen dress or crystal pendant. She looked normal. Like someone I might pass in a grocery store and forget 10 steps later. But then I saw her eyes. Still sharp. Still almond-shaped and a shade that once made me pause mid-sentence. But now, they carried something new. Or maybe something missing. The sheen was gone. The polished confidence she used to wear like armor had faded. And beside her, Dax, in joggers. Not Lululemon or anything expensive. Just basic cotton joggers and a hoodie that didn't quite fit. His hair was down, slightly frizzed. No product, no filters, no performance lighting. Just him, standing there with a to-go cup and a distracted look, thumbing through his phone like the world could wait. She smiled, or tried to. "This is Dax, my husband," she said, her voice catching slightly. He looked up, registering me for the first time. His expression didn't change much, just a flicker of recognition, a subtle tightening around the jaw. Then he extended his hand, like this was some pleasant reunion and not a cosmic joke. "Rowan, right?" he said. "You still doing that data job?" I laughed. Not a polite chuckle. Not the awkward kind you fake when someone forgets your name. I laughed. Loud. Unfiltered. Like a pressure valve finally released. Because in that moment, standing across from the man who'd once pitched me illegal supplements in a parking lot, who lied about degrees and transformed himself with other people's money, who stood beside my ex-wife with the poise of a man who had no idea his kingdom was crumbling, I saw everything clearly. He wasn't a guru. He wasn't a powerhouse or a leader or a spiritual alpha. He was a rerun. A man on loop, saying the same things with fewer people listening each time. And he had no idea who I really was. I wiped my eyes, still smiling, and looked at Alana. "How's the book coming?" I asked. She flinched. A barely noticeable one, but it was there. Her fingers gripped the strap of her bag tighter. "Still, in edits," she said. Dax nodded, as if he'd already moved past the question. "We're in a creative pause right now," he added. "Regrouping. Scaling down to scale up, you know? Jargon. Always with the jargon." "Of course," I said. "By the way, I never thanked you for the show in Kyoto." Really elevated the entire summit. His eyes narrowed just a bit, but he didn't respond. Alana gave me a strained smile. "It's good to see you, Rowan." "You too," I said, and I meant it. But not because I missed her. Not because I wanted her back. I meant it because for the first time, I saw her without the fog. Without the filters. Without the script. She was just a person now. A tired one. Maybe embarrassed. Maybe not ready to admit how wrong she'd been. But no longer pretending she'd made the perfect choice. They walked past me, and I didn't turn to look. I didn't need to. That moment had given me more closure than 1,000 emails ever could. Later that evening, I sat with Jamal at our favorite bar, sliding him the full story like a victory cigar. He laughed so hard he choked on his drink. "He said you still doing your data job?" he repeated, wheezing. Like he's not unemployed and canceled on every social platform that matters? I grinned. Man's still acting like he's on a press tour. "But here's the best part," I added, pulling out my phone and opening a document from my cloud folder. "He was one of our old clients. 3 years ago. Brief contract. Try to get us to scrub his online history before pitching some wellness app to investors." Jamal froze. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious." We declined. Because he had too many red flags. Debt collectors, lawsuits, ghosted contracts. He begged us to make it all disappear. "And now he's trying to disappear into your ex-wife's bank account," Jamal muttered. I nodded. "Only now she knows." "Think she'll leave him?" "Doesn't matter," I said. The illusion's gone. That night, lying on my couch with the window open and the city humming softly outside, I thought about the way she looked. Not devastated. Not entirely broken. Just tired. Like someone waking up from a dream that stopped making sense 10 minutes ago, but still trying to force the ending. And Dax? He was already half gone, even while standing next to her. I saw it in his eyes. The distraction. The fading grip on his own narrative. The followers drying up. The speaking gigs canceled. The pre-orders refunded. You can only sell smoke for so long before people start coughing. And me? I wasn't healed. Healing isn't a finish line. It's a rhythm. Some days it hums along. Others, it skips and jerks. But I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't wake up feeling cheated. I didn't go to sleep wondering what I did wrong. Because now I knew. I didn't lose to a better man. I got out of the way of a train wreck. A few days later, I got a call from an old colleague who remembered Dax from that brief business deal. He'd seen the videos, the Reddit threads, the exposés. "Didn't you try to warn him?" he asked. "Warn her," I corrected. He paused. "Right. Her. Damn. Yeah. Damn." I scrolled through my messages that night, past the last voice note from Alana, past the silence that followed. I didn't reach out. I wouldn't. She had her journey, and I had mine. But I knew the truth now. She didn't leave me for something better. She left for something louder. And when the volume faded, all that was left was static. And me? I had peace. Not the postcard kind. Not the spot A serenity. The earned kind. The kind that grows when you stop trying to fix the version of yourself that someone else rejected. I didn't need a spotlight. I just needed to stop confusing being overlooked with being unworthy. So when I laughed that day outside that cafe, in front of the two people who once believed they were ascending to some cosmic level of love, I wasn't laughing at them. I was laughing for me. Because for the first time in a long time, I saw the whole picture. And I was free. I didn't post it. That was important to me. I didn't want to be the guy who went viral for revenge. I didn't want to be the man scorned who took to social media to tear someone down. But the universe, or maybe karma with a Wi-Fi signal, had other plans. A month after that run-in with Alana and Dax, it hit. A YouTube video titled "Exposing My Ex's Fake Guru Husband" blew up overnight. Not just some sloppy amateur drama post either. This was well-edited, well-researched, and surgically devastating. It was over 20 minutes long, and the creator, a guy named Reese, had clearly been burned and had receipts for days. He started with a casual greeting, the kind influencers use when they're about to say something explosive in a calm tone. "Hey guys, I didn't want to make this video, but it's time." Reese was lean, mid-30s, with a trimmed beard and a calmness in his voice that made everything he said sound even worse for Dax. He went on to explain how he'd been a mentee in Dax's coaching program, which charged $7,999 for a 12-week transformation course titled Ascend and Conquer, from beta to apex. Reese had paid in full. He said Dax had promised weekly one-on-one sessions, custom development plans, and access to exclusive events. What he got was 3 group Zoom calls, a recycled PDF ebook full of Pinterest quotes, and a 30-minute recorded audio where Dax literally whispered, "You are the storm," 10 times over an instrumental piano track. But the real heat came when Reese revealed that Dax had stolen entire modules from his own online course, word for word. He played the comparison live in the video. Same scripts. Same exact phrasing. Even the same typo on a slide titled "Energetic Masculine Archetypes." Reese had emails, screenshots, voicemails. One clip showed Dax asking for extensions on payment promises. Another was a blurry video of Dax at a backyard event claiming he was nominated for a Time 100 award in 2018 while sipping out of a red Solo cup. Then Reese dropped the bombshell. Dax's real name, Daniel Thorndale, a former door-to-door vacuum salesman with a shaky employment history and 3 small claims lawsuits tied to failed business ventures between 2012 and 2017. He displayed court documents, pulled up archived business registrations, even showed LinkedIn profiles that had been wiped clean but were still retrievable through cached pages. Reddit got a hold of the video by noon. By evening, Twitter was ablaze. Threads titled "Daniel Thorndale is not who he says he is" spread like wildfire. People started sharing their own experiences, DM screenshots, unpaid affiliate commissions, awkward retreat stories. One woman claimed she'd been offered a goddess cleansing package for $1,500 and got a box with sea salt, a cheap journal, and a QR code linking to a guided meditation Dax had recorded in his garage. The media outlets came next. First the mid-tier gossip blogs, then the tech culture sites. By the end of the week, even BuzzFeed had a story titled, "From Muscle to Mislead: The Rise and Fall of Dax Thornton, the Internet's Favorite Alpha Fraud." I never said a word. I didn't repost. I didn't subtweet. I just watched it all unfold from the safety of my quiet apartment, coffee in hand, calm for the first time in months. And then, like a final confirmation that closure really does come on its own terms, Alana's social accounts disappeared. Her Instagram was gone. Her LinkedIn wiped. Twitter? Deleted. The digital shrine she'd built for their relationship, the filtered photos, the couple's mantras, the co-authored captions, it all vanished. I found out through Priya, of course. "Dude," she said, practically storming into my office. She ghosted the entire internet. She deleted everything. Dax too. I nodded. I figured that was coming. She turned off comments last week, and now everything's gone. Like they never existed. Maybe that's what they want. Priya raised an eyebrow. "You're really zen about this." I shrugged. I didn't push the first domino. I just moved out of the way before it fell. That night, I went through the comments on Reese's video again. Not to gloat. just to watch the current. One in particular caught my eye. I knew something was off when he called himself a solar sexual warrior. Dude was all performance. Another read. We need to stop falling for people just because they speak with confidence. It's not wisdom. It's sales. It struck me then. How many people were just looking for something to believe in now? Someone to tell them they were enough, or not enough, but could be fixed. And how easy it was for someone like Dax to twist that need into a paycheck. And Alana? She'd wanted belief too. Wanted to be chosen by someone who spoke like the universe itself whispered in his ear. I remembered the way she used to look at Dax in those pictures, like he was fire and she was ice desperate to melt. But in the end, all she got was smoke. About a week later, I got a letter. Not an email. An actual letter. Handwritten. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Slanted, neat, a little heavy on the loops. She wrote, "Rowan, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and I won't ask for a response. But I needed to say something the old way. Without an audience. Without an algorithm. I believed in something that wasn't real. I let myself be swept up in it. I traded certainty for sparkles. And you didn't deserve that. You were solid. Present. Real. And I see that now. I'm sorry I couldn't see it then. I don't know who I am right now. But I know who I'm not. I'm not the woman I pretended to be beside him. I'm not the girl who posts enlightenment quotes over filtered sunsets while slowly unraveling behind the scenes. You didn't lose me. I lost myself. Thank you for being kind even when you didn't have to be. Alana." I folded the letter and put it away. Not because I needed to hold on to it, but because I didn't need to throw it out either. It wasn't a ticket back in. It wasn't a bridge being rebuilt. It was just a voice echoing from a different shore. I never wrote back. There was no need. She said what she needed to say, and I'd already done my part by surviving, by growing, by refusing to shrink myself to fit someone else's narrative. In the weeks that followed, I caught wind that Dax, or Daniel, was trying to rebrand again. Something about cold plunges and Nordic masculinity. No traction. The comments were brutal. Screenshots of his old lies haunted every new attempt. Meanwhile, I kept building. Quietly. No hashtags. No mantras. Just doing the work, showing up, investing in people who didn't need theatrics to feel whole. Somewhere, I knew Alana was trying to pick up her pieces too. And I hoped she would. Honestly, not for me, for her. Because nobody deserves to stay inside a lie once they've finally seen the truth. One afternoon, Jamal and I walked past a bookstore downtown. In the clearance window sat a copy of Thorfield Presence, Grit, Grind, Glory, marked down to $3.99. We both burst out laughing. Because sometimes the universe doesn't need you to clap back. Sometimes it just clears the stage and leaves the spotlight hanging there, empty, silent, honest. And in that stillness, you realize truth always wins, even when it takes its sweet time. There was a time when waking up alone felt like proof I had failed. The quiet in the morning used to press against my chest like a weight. No toothbrush beside mine. No hairbands on the nightstand. No movement in the kitchen. No sound of someone humming while scrolling through emails. Just me in the silence. But silence, like most things, changes shape when you stop fearing it. With time, it becomes something else entirely. Not absence. Not a wound. Just peace. It's been almost a year now. Since the steak that never got cooked. Since the birthday that ended in a signature. Since the illusion of permanence crumbled with 2 words from Alana's mouth, I found someone. And yet here I am. Not broken. Not bitter. Just here. Still building. Still standing. I moved apartments. Upgraded. Even. Not because I needed more space, but because I deserved more light. The new place has huge windows and a balcony that catches sunsets like it was built for reflection. I've filled it with things I love. Plants I water every Sunday, books that don't try to fix me, a vinyl collection that makes silence sing. No ghosts in the walls. No memories embedded in the carpet. Just the present, quietly humming. Work took a turn, too. After the Dax unraveling, after Kyoto, after the viral clips, after the media storm, I got offers. Invitations to consult, to speak, to take on leadership at firms that once wouldn't return my calls. I turned most of them down, not out of pride, but clarity. I didn't need a pedestal. I needed purpose. So I joined a smaller firm with better values, where people still made decisions face to face. And for the first time in years, I don't dread Mondays. I don't feel like I'm chasing a ghost dressed in KPIs and quarterly decks. I'm building again, not empires. Not illusions. Just good things. Solid things. And somewhere in the middle of that quiet rebuild, I met Isla. It wasn't dramatic. No movie scene. No spilled coffee or grand declarations. We met because my upstairs neighbor's sink overflowed and Isla happened to be the emergency maintenance contact. Turns out she was just covering for her uncle that weekend. She showed up in jeans, paint under her fingernails, holding a wrench and an iced coffee. She fixed the leak in 10 minutes and stayed another 45 because we started talking. About the leak. About her art. About the book I was halfway through and the mural she was painting at a children's center. She wasn't flashy. No filters. No curated answers. She didn't ask what car I drove or where I saw myself in 5 years. She asked what I'd unlearned in the past 5. I laughed. Then I told her the truth. And she didn't flinch. We went for lunch the next day. Soup and bread. I still remember because she brought an extra spoon, just in case yours is weird. We sat on a park bench, and she told me about her students. She teaches art therapy on the side, and how most of them are learning to speak without words. I told her about Dax. About Alana. Not the viral version. The real one. The late nights. The way love can feel like furniture. Something you get used to until it breaks, and you realize you never learned how to fix it. She didn't try to save me. She just listened. That was the start. Now, months later, Isla is a part of my life in a way that doesn't overshadow it. She fits like light through a curtain, quiet but undeniable. She doesn't ask me to be more or to apologize for being less. She doesn't chase perfection. She chases stillness. Joy. The kind you can hold without squeezing. She's met Jamal. He approved instantly. Called her a unicorn with steel in her spine. She rolled her eyes and handed him a plate of cookies. He's been in love with her cookies ever since. Sometimes, when Isla and I sit on the couch, she'll rest her head on my shoulder and ask me questions like, "What scared you the most about starting over?" And I'll tell her, honestly, that I didn't know who I was without being someone's anchor. That I was afraid I was only good at being steady, never seen, just leaned on until I broke. And she'll say, then maybe you needed someone who didn't need saving. We haven't said I love you yet. Not because we don't feel it, but because we don't rush the important things. We're building something with breath in it, not bravado. Something we can walk through barefoot. Every once in a while, I still get a message from Alana. Not often, not invasive, just enough to remind me that the past doesn't stay buried, it echoes. Sometimes a simple, "Hope you're well." Once, she sent a photo of a painting Isla had done that she saw in a community art show. Just, "Didn't know she was yours. It's beautiful." I didn't reply. There's nothing cruel about silence. Sometimes it's the kindest thing you can offer. Because I finally understand now, Alana didn't just marry Dax because she wanted someone more ambitious. She married him because he looked like the future she thought she deserved. She couldn't see that he was a mirror, not a man, reflecting everything she hoped she was. And when the mirror cracked, she saw herself. And it scared her. The difference between Dax and me? He sold the dream. I lived the reality. I existed. That was always her word. You just exist. And she was right. I do exist. Not as a symbol, not as a projection, but as a man who wakes up, waters his plants, calls his best friend, kisses a woman who brings soup when he's sick and never once asks if he's enough. Isla exists too. Fully. Messily. Honestly. She sings off-key and burns rice sometimes, and once tried to hang a shelf with nail polish instead of a level. But she laughs like she means it. And when she touches me, it's not performative. It's present. Last weekend, we visited her parents. Her dad grilled, her mom overfed me, and her little nephew asked if I was going to be his new uncle. I choked on a carrot. Isla just smiled. I don't know where it's going. I don't need to. I've stopped trying to write the ending before the second chapter. And the funny thing? That moment in the cafe with Alana and Dax, that awkward handshake and my uncontrollable laughter, it's the moment everything turned. Not because it was revenge, but because it was clarity. He didn't even remember that he once begged my firm to erase his record, that we declined, that he stood before me, unaware I was the very man who held his past in a folder labeled "Do Not Touch." That's how fragile his empire was, and that's how strong mine has become. I don't sparkle. I don't sell masculinity in a bottle. I don't call myself alpha, anything. But I built something real. I rebuilt me, quietly, patiently, without hashtags. Without having to tear anyone down to feel taller. And maybe that's the true mark of peace, when you can walk past the wreckage and not feel the urge to point and say, "Told you so." You just nod and keep walking. Because peace doesn't need applause. It just needs room to breathe.